Haribo, namaste, and welcome again to another Krishna book reading. My name is Janapati Das, and thank you for joining me today. We are going to get right into our kirtan of the hearing and chanting of Krishna's names. So feel free to join in here. Offer my respects to my spiritual master. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Haribo. So, we are going to continue, actually not just continue, but start into chapter 5. Chapter 5 is entitled Nanda, the meeting of Nanda and Vasudeva. So, just to recap from our story, we remember that Kamsa had tried to kill a baby girl that was switched with Krishna, but it turned into goddess Durga and flew up into the sky and chastised Kamsa. And Kamsa, being probably a worshiper of goddess Durga for material benefit, felt afraid and ashamed and let Vasudeva and Devaki go and have their daughter. And the next day he went to go tell his ministers, and his ministers, being not very intelligent but also very demoniac and probably feeling like they wanted to also engage in the persecution of saintly people, talked Kamsa out of basically to do demoniac things, go around killing the children just in case that the child was around somewhere. It would just commit. So it was a similar thing to like in the story of the Bible where Jesus was born and King Herod ordered the murder of the newly born children around the land to kill Jesus because he had been told that there was a king that was born, and he was feeling envious and very afraid, so he went around killing. At that time, of course, Joseph and Mary had taken Jesus, had been warned, and took Jesus to Egypt. So it's a similar story here, but Krishna, of course, is being protected in Vrindavan. So, in this chapter, let's continue. Although Krishna was the real son of Vasudeva and Devaki, because of Kamsa's atrocious activities, Vasudeva could not enjoy the birth ceremony of his son. But Nanda Maharaj, the foster father, celebrated the birth ceremony of Krishna very joyfully. So they had to be very careful about doing something very big and pompous and whatever they might be, because then everybody would know and probably King Kamsa could find out. The next day it was declared that a male child was born of Yashoda. According to Vedic custom, Nanda Maharaj called for learned astrologers and brahmanas to perform the birth ceremony. After the birth of a child, the astrologers calculate the moment of the birth and make a horoscope of the child's future life. Another ceremony takes place after the birth of the child. The family members take baths, cleanse themselves, and decorate themselves with ornaments and garlands. Then they come before the child and the astrologer to hear of the future life of the child. So the birth of a child is a very important celebration in many cultures. And when I was living in West Africa, they had naming ceremonies for their children, which they had, you would give a name, you'd cut some hair off, and you'd give them a bath and have all this music and very spiritually minded people coming and praying over the child. So it was there's a lot of places. I think the West is only the place that doesn't take it really that seriously. Although I suppose there's like baptism and things like that. So, okay, so Nanda Maharaj and all the members of the family dressed and sat down in front of the birthplace. All the brahmanas who were assembled on this occasion chanted auspicious mantras according to the rituals, while the astrologers performed the birth ceremony. So we have the brahmanas. There is what's called the varnashram system in the Vedic system, and there are four what we call varna, and there's Brahmanas, which are the priestly class. They do a lot of ceremonies, fire sacrifices, and things like that. They're considered the mouth of Lord Vishnu. And then we have the Kshatriyas. The Kshatriyas are considered the arms. The Kshatriyas are like the administrative and kings, the warriors of society. Then we have the Vaishyas, which are the mercantile class. They're considered the waist or the torso of Lord Vishnu, and they engage in selling and raising cows. And so Nanda Maharaj was actually a Vaishya, part of the Vaishya community. And then the last caste is Shudras. Shudras are the working class. They generally serve the other classes. They do a lot of the labor, and they're considered the legs of Lord Vishnu. So this system originally was set up. Everybody was born according to their propensities in a particular caste, and they all supported the whole society. There was no untouchable caste in original Vedic thought. That was something that was later added. It's considered offensive, and so there you have it. There was never really an untouchable caste originally in Vedic society. Okay, so all the Brahmanas who were assembled there on this occasion chanted auspicious mantras according to the rituals, while the astrologers performed the birth ceremony. All the demigods are also worshipped on this occasion, as well as the forefathers of the family. Nanda Maharaj distributed 200,000 well-decorated, dressed, and ornamented cows to the Brahmanas. He not only gave cows in charity, but hills of grain decorated with golden bordered garments and many ornaments. In the material world, we possess riches and wealth in many ways, but sometimes not in very honest and pious ways, because that is the nature of accumulating wealth. According to Vedic injunction, therefore, such wealth should be purified by giving cows in gold in charity to the Brahmanas. A newborn child is also purified by giving grains in charity to the Brahmanas. In this material world, it is to be understood that we are always living in a contaminated state. We therefore have to purify the duration of our lives, our possession of wealth, and ourselves. The duration of life is purified by taking bath and cleansing the body inside and outside, and accepting the 10 kinds of purificatory processes. By austerities, by worship of the Lord, and by distribution of charity, we can purify the possession of wealth. We can purify ourselves by studying the Vedas, by striving for self-realization, and by understanding the supreme absolute truth. It is therefore stated in the Vedic literature that by birth everyone is born a Shudra, and by accepting the purificatory process one becomes twice born. By studies of the Vedas one can become Vipra, which is the preliminary qualification for becoming a Brahmana. When one understands the absolute truth and perfection, he is called the Brahmana. And when one is a Brahmana, reaches further perfection, he becomes a Vaishnava or a devotee. In that ceremony, all the Brahmanas assembled began to chant different kinds of Vedic mantras to invoke all good fortune for the child. There are different kinds of chanting known as Sutta, Magadha, Vandi, and Viradavali. Along with this chanting of mantras and songs, bugles and kettle drums sounded outside the house. On this occasion, the joyous vibration could be heard in all the pasturing grounds and all the houses. Within and outside the houses, there were varieties of artistic paintings done with rice pulp, and scented water was sprinkled everywhere, even on the roads and streets. Ceilings and roofs were decorated with different kinds of flags, festoons, and green leaves. The gates were made of green leaves and flowers. All the cows, bulls, and calves were smeared with a mixture of oil and turmeric, and painted with minerals like red oxide, yellow clay, and manganese. They wore garlands of peacock feathers and were covered with nicely covered dresses and gold necklaces. When all the ecstatic coward men heard that Nanda Maharaj, father of Krishna, was celebrating the birth ceremony of his son, they became spontaneously joyful. They dressed themselves with very costly garments and ornamented their bodies with different kinds of earrings and necklaces, and wore great turbans on their heads. After dressing themselves in this gorgeous way, they took to various kinds of presentations, and thus approached the house of Nanda Maharaj. As soon as they heard that Mother Yashoda had given birth to a child, all the cowherd women became overwhelmed with joy, and they also dressed themselves with various kinds of costly garments and ornaments, and smeared scented cosmetics on their bodies. As the dust of the lotus on the lotus flower exhibits the exquisite beauty of the flower, all the gopis, cowherd girls, applied the dust of the kunkuma on their lotus-like face. These beautiful gopis took their different presentations and very soon reached the house of Nanda Maharaj. Overburdened with their heavy hips and swollen breasts, the gopis could not proceed very quickly towards the house of Nanda Maharaj, but out of ecstatic love for Krishna, they began to proceed as quickly as possible. Their ears were decorated with pearl rings, their necks were decorated with jewel padlocks, their lips and eyes were decorated with different kinds of lipstick and ointment, and their hands were decorated with nice golden bangles. As they were very hastily passing over the stone road, the flower garlands which were decorating their bodies fell to the ground, and it appeared that a shower of flowers was falling from the sky. From the movement of different kinds of ornaments on their bodies, they were looking still more beautiful. In this way, they all reached the house of Nanda Yashoda and blessed the child. "Dear child, you live long just to protect us." While they were blessing child Krishna in this way, they offered a mixture of turmeric powder with oil, yogurt, milk, and water. They not only sprinkled this mixture on the body of the child Krishna, but on all other persons who were present there. Also on that auspicious occasion, there were different bands of expert musicians playing. When the cowherd men saw the pastimes of the cowherd women, they became very joyful, and in response they began to throw yogurt, milk, clarified butter, and water upon the bodies of the gopis. Then both parties began to throw butter on each other's bodies. Nanda Maharaj was also very happy to see the pastimes of the cowherd men and women, and he became very liberal in giving charity to the different singers who were assembled there. Some singers were reciting great verses from the Upanishads and Puranas, some were glorifying the family ancestors, and some were singing very sweet songs. There were also many learned brahmanas present, and Nanda Maharaj, being very satisfied on this occasion, began to give them different kinds of garments, ornaments, and cows in charity. So you can see this system in this culture has so many different kinds of things, different ways of giving charity to people during this birthing ceremony, dressing very nicely. There's a lot of like ritualistic sort of things to do, and it's joyful. It's always a joyful occasion. It is very important to note in this connection how wealthy the inhabitants of Vrindavan were simply by raising cows. All the cowherd men belonged to the Vaishya community, and their business was to protect the cows and cultivate crops. By their dress and ornament, and by their behavior, it appears that although they were in a small village, they were still rich in material possessions. They possessed such an abundance of various kinds of milk products that they were throwing butter lavishly on each other's bodies without restriction. Their wealth in milk, yogurt, clarified butter, and many other milk products, and by trading their agricultural products, they were rich in various kinds of jewelry, ornaments, and costly dresses. Not only did they possess all these things, but they could give them away in charity, as did Nanda Maharaj. So at a different time, as cowherders and people who grew crops, they had a system of trading with people, economic system that was much more beneficial for society, and they took care of their cows. They didn't have slaughterhouses, and they didn't, if they were abstracting milk or whatever, they didn't attach, keep them in a closed place and attach machines to them to get, you know, and pump them up full of steroids like they do in today's society to try to get as much milk from people. They had plenty of milk and they had plenty of cows, and it was a cultural system to honor the cows, because cows are very dear to Krishna. So you don't kill them, you don't abuse them, you don't take them away from their calves and all the horrible things that they do in today's society in slaughterhouses. They're just like demoniac. If you've ever seen some of these videos of what they do to animals, just so that we can have a Big Mac or something, you know. So you know, it's ideally better to not eat meat. But you could see they had milk back then, but they took care of their cows. Thus, Nanda Maharaj, the foster father of Lord Krishna, began to satisfy the desires of all the men assembled there. He respectfully received them and gave them charity, whatever they desired. The learned Brahmanas, who had no other source of income, were completely dependent on the Vaishya and Kshatriya communities for the maintenance, and they received gifts on such festive occasions as birthdays, marriages, etc. While Nanda Maharaj was worshipping Lord Vishnu on this occasion and was trying to satisfy all the people there, his only desire was that the newborn child Krishna would be happy. Nanda Maharaj had no knowledge that this child was the origin of Vishnu, but he was praying to Lord Vishnu to protect him. So they're living their life there as Vaishyas. They have their systems of rituals, and they pray to Lord Vishnu for protection, even though Krishna is the source of the Lord Vishnu. But due to the Yogamaya energy that we had been talking about, this internal energy of Krishna that attracts love for Krishna, he can put people into illusion, because that's the sort of relationship he wants to have, and that's the relationship his devotees want to have. They want to be a relationship where Krishna is their child or their friend or their lover or whatever it might be. And so Krishna provides that. So sometimes, you know, the cowherd boys will wrestle with Krishna. It's like, you know, if they were thinking like, oh, this is God, this is the supreme personality of Godhead, Lord Vishnu, I don't want to wrestle with him, I should pay my obeisances. That's not very fun for Krishna. Krishna likes to enjoy. You know, the Supreme Lord likes to enjoy. He likes to enjoy having loving relationships with his devotees and his children. Rohini Devi, mother of Balaram, was the most fortunate wife of Vasudeva. She was away from her husband, yet just to congratulate Maharaj Nanda on the occasion of the birth ceremony of his son Krishna, she dressed herself very nicely. Wearing a garland, a necklace, and other bodily ornaments, she appeared on the scene and moved hither and thither. According to the Vedic system, a woman whose husband is not at home does not dress herself very nicely, but although Rohini's husband was away, she dressed herself on this occasion. From the opulence of the birth ceremony of Krishna, it is very clear that at that time Vrindavan was rich in every respect, because Lord Krishna took birth in the house of King Nanda, and Mother Yashoda, the goddess of fortune, was obliged to manifest her opulences in Vrindavan. It appeared that Vrindavan had already become a site for the pastimes of the goddess of fortune. So Yashoda and Nanda, they are the sort of like overseeing rulers of this area. That's why we refer to them King and Mother, Queen Yashoda. After the birth ceremony, Nanda Maharaj decided to go to Mathura to pay the annual tax to the government of Kamsa. Before leaving, he called for the able cowherd men of the village and asked them to take care of Vrindavan in his absence. When Nanda Maharaj arrived in Mathura, Vasudeva got the news and was very eager to congratulate his friend. He immediately went to the place where Nanda Maharaj was staying. When Vasudeva saw Nanda, he felt that he had regained his life. Nanda, overwhelmed with joy, immediately stood up and embraced Vasudeva. Vasudeva was received very warmly and offered a nice place to sit. At that time, Vasudeva was anxious about his two sons who had been put under the protection of Nanda without Nanda's knowledge. With great anxiety, Vasudeva inquired about them. Both Balaram and Krishna were the sons of Vasudeva. Balaram was transferred to the womb of Rohini, Vasudeva's own wife, but Rohini was kept under the protection of Nanda Maharaj. Krishna was personally delivered to Yashoda and exchanged with her daughter. Nanda Maharaj knew that Balaram was the son of Vasudeva, but although he did not know that Krishna was also Vasudeva's son. But Vasudeva was aware of this fact and inquired very eagerly about Krishna and Balaram. So I think I'm going to continue this next part of the conversation between these two great souls. I'll leave it for the next time, actually, because we're running out of time here. So you can see there's this wonderful birthing ceremony that they celebrated, and there'll be more about that. And it's a very rich and wonderful cultural experience, and everyone is very happy because of the presence of the Supreme Personality of Godhead in Vrindavan. Vrindavan is very fortunate, and the residents are very fortunate. So let's chant a little bit. Thank you very much. Feel free, if you have any questions, thoughts, or whatever, put your comments in the comment section. Subscribe to my channel so that more people can hear these wonderful pastimes of Krishna. Thank you very much. Nitai Gaur, Hari Bol, Nitai Gaur, Nitai Gaur, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Nitai Okay, thank you so much for tuning in. And if you haven't watched some of the other videos, go back in my page and watch them. They start from Krishna Book Reading 1 all the way up to present. And we'll see you next time. Okay. Aloha.